Unless you've been living under a rock, you're well aware of Sega's tiny arcade machine, the Astro City Mini, is coming out this year on December 17th. Designed to mimic the Astro City line of arcade cabinets that were popular in Japan during the 1990s, this smaller 1/6 scale version isn't just something to stick on your shelf and forget about. It also happens to be loaded with 36 arcade games, an HDMI port to connect it to your television, and optional controllers you can pick up to play with your family and friends. In this episode, we will be going over the games that will appear on the Astro City Mini and answer the burning question Sega fans are asking. Is this thing worth the roughly $150 you'll be paying to have it shipped to you? I hope you guys enjoy the games of Sega's Astro City Mini. It goes without saying, but Cotton was a great addition here. Sega owns the IP now, so I had a sneaky suspicion they'd include it. The original arcade version has a great soundtrack and is quite challenging, making it an excellent horizontal shoot-'em-up addition. Shinobi is one of Sega's most iconic and long-lasting retro IPs from the 1980s, so its inclusion here is no surprise. The side-scrolling action is quintessential arcade goodness and adds challenge and great gameplay to the lineup. Despite showing up on the Sega Genesis as a completely different game, Shadow Dancer here has never come home fully intact in its original arcade form. It plays very similar to the original Shinobi, but now with even more challenge, a K9 companion, and improved visuals. This one has been a long time coming, and I'm happy it was included. Similar to Shadow Dancer, Cyber Police ESWAT is another arcade game that has never come home intact. The Genesis version was completely different, and the versions patterned after it were typically cut down something fierce in visuals and sound. Its two-player mode is the way to play it. Crackdown is a top-down run-and-gun with poor hit detection, enemies that appear directly in front of you, and can shoot you off the damn screen. I cannot fathom this being fun at any level on the small screen, though it should be much more playable with two players on a television. Gain Ground isn't too dissimilar to Crackdown, though the stages are more open, there are more players to choose from, and has more variety in regards to weaponry. This again will suffer mightily on the small screen, but TV play should remedy that. Sega was going to put Puyo Puyo on this thing just as sure as the day is long, so it comes as no surprise. Fans of Mean Bean Machine have much to celebrate. Columns has been around for quite some time and lands on just about every Sega compilation under the sun, so you knew it was coming. It's ancient by even puzzle standards, so I doubt many will be playing this one very often. Sega's lovable bank robbers, the Bonanza brothers, make an appearance here as well. It's infinitely more playable in 2-player mode, so grab a friend for this one. There are only a few slots on the Astro Mini I consider wasted, and Puzzle and Action is definitely one of them. Actually make that 2 of them. You get TANT-R and ICHIDANT-R here, puzzle titles that have you counting passengers, matching shapes, and guessing numbers along with a simple story that ties it all together. You might find some fun here if you have kids, but outside of that, Sega didn't need 2 of these damn things to represent. Wonder Boy is well known to many retro fans, including Nintendo kids under the Adventure Island name. You run, jump, and collect items and food while trying to stay alive. The gameplay is auto-scrolling based, so it's more challenging than many platformers of the time, but still has a fun factor that should serve it well here. Wonder Boy in Monsterland was a rare mix of RPG and arcade game when it was released. While it's stage-based, you have the ability to talk to others, buy and find items, and figure out the best way to deal with enemies. It looks simple but holds a ton of appeal if you just give it a chance. Wonder Boy 3 Monster LAIR throws off the shackles of RPG elements and completely dives into the run and gun and shoot 'em up genres. The auto-scrolling screen is back, and you get a ton of weapons to choose from. It's one of the better looking games in the series, and a great addition here. Alien Syndrome is one of those games that can be just as appealing as stuff like Contra. The run and gun action is mixed with exploration, and each stage has a boss you must deal with. It's 2 players, has lots of different weapons, and has an unmistakable Aliens vibe to its sights and sounds. While Alien Syndrome was an overhead run and gun, Alien Storm here is a mixed genre shooter that has both first-person as well as side-scrolling segments. Don't be fooled into thinking you've played this if you've had a go at the Genesis version. The arcade game is infinitely superior. Golden Axe is just as classic as something like Shinobi and needed to be here. It's short and simple, but can be played with 2 players and has a timeless appeal thanks to its great gameplay and screen-filling magic. If you have kids, this is the stuff you start them out on if you want them to be a future fan of Sega. As good as the original game was, the Revenge of Death Adder was so much better. It looked great, was longer, and had way more variety. Stages now have multiple paths to take, and some even have new scaling sections where you walk into the background. The original arcade was up to 4 players simultaneous. though I expect it to be cut down to only 2 here. While I could have done without the original columns, I'm actually quite happy Part 2 is here. This had the best version of flash columns of the original games, a mode I can still play for hours on end. The new patterns change up the visual appeal, and it of course has 2 player modes to compete against your friends. Dark Edge was Sega's attempt to move the 2D fighter into 3D gameplay. It uses scaling sprites and backgrounds, making this feel like you were actually playing it on an XY axis. The graphics are wild and filled with crazy looking fighters. The gameplay does take some getting used to, particularly the quick changes in position that can disorient the hell out of you early on. It's an interesting game in Sega's history, not just for its gameplay, but also because it's never before been released officially on a home device. This is one of my most anticipated games on the Astro Mini, mainly because Virtua Fighter has not come home arcade perfect before. As a fan, this is a big deal to finally see these classic, flat-shaded polygons in all their original glory. If the emulation is close, this game is worth the price of admission all by itself. Old Fantasy Zone here doesn't get the love it deserves. Perhaps it's the candy-coated visuals that belie its worth, but I'll never get tired of seeing and playing this great multi-directional shoot-'em-up. There are folks out there that scoff at the inclusion of Altered Beast. They'll laugh and say it's not a good game. But Altered Beast is a classic and it deserves to be here as much as anything else. It's a good one to play with your kids thanks to its easy to understand gameplay. Sega dabbled a bit in the shoot-'em-up genre here and there, and Sonic Boom was one of the fruits of that labor. This game is brutally hard on a full-sized screen, so I can't even imagine how difficult it'll be on the tiny screen of the Mini. I do appreciate its inclusion, however, if nothing more than to finally have a home version that is arcade perfect. Scramble Spirits is another shoot-'em-up similar to Sonic Boom. This one has some really cool scaling segments where you attack ground targets, and it again is a really difficult game. The small screen isn't going to help that, making it another one that is almost mandatory for the HDMI output. Remember Flicky? This is the one where you have to rescue little birds from ravenous cats. The single screen playfield wraps around so you're always going in circles, something that does take some getting used to. I usually would come down hard for including this, but it's another one that's easy to play, so your kids may appreciate it a lot more than you do. Puzzle games were really popular in Japan, so it's no shock to see yet another Puyo Puyo title here. 2 slots were pushing it though, particularly since the sequel does things so much better than the first. This really should have been something else. Quartet was a 4-player shoot-'em-up where you needed to explore a level, find its key, and move on. Quartet 2 is not a sequel, but rather a 2-player upgrade Sega made especially for 2-player cabinets. Its inclusion here makes me wonder, will all of the games only have a 2-player option? Because if that's true, we will likely only see the 2-player version of Revenge of Death Adder as well. Thunder Force AC was the only game in the series to see a dedicated arcade release, so I expected Sega to roll it out and represent. It does have home ports for other platforms, but it'd be nice to see the original here in all its glory. My god, I hate Alex Kidd The Lost Stars. I have no patience for it, and it quickly falls apart after only minutes of gameplay for me. There are those of you out there that love it, however, and it's here if you're one of them. For the rest of you, this trash title will quickly be forgotten and never touched again. Perhaps the biggest surprise on the Astro Mini was Radmobile. It only came home once on the Sega Saturn, in what was not particularly well received by the masses. The original arcade version of course used an analog steering wheel, making you really question that if Sega was willing to convert these games to digital control schemes, where the hell is Outrunners at? This is My Hero. I am not a fan of My Hero. My Hero sucks. This is why I'm not a fan of My Hero. This cockeyed dumbass gets hit one time and it's over. Rinse, wash, and repeat. Seriously, it's one of my least favorite Sega games from the 1980s and has no place in this collection. I have to confess, while I am a fan of Space Harrier, I was surprised by its showing up here. Sega seemed to back away from most of the superscalers released in the mid-1980s in favor of stuff from the System.32. I mean, they could have easily added Thunderblade, Afterburner, and even a few lesser-known titles like AB Cop or Rail Chase, yet Space Harrier is it. I won't hate on it being here, but I think a few other games would have been much better choices. Sega went for a real deep cut with Arabian Fight, originally a 4-player beat-em-up similar to Revenge of Death Adder, complete with full-screen magic attacks. The playfield and characters in this are constantly scaling in and out, and it has really cool animated sequences where enemies climb into the screen. It's never come home before and a welcome addition to the library. This is another one where I believe the 2-player version will be the one on the Astro Mini, so I wouldn't get your hopes up for 4-player action. Filing this one under another wasted slot is Stack Columns. It wasn't enough that we got the first 2, but 3 is just crazy. I mean, come the hell on, Sega. You seriously need to retire some of these antiquated notions that we need so many of the same damn games. Hardcore run-and-gun action describes Ninja Princess just fine. It's the basis for the Sega Master System version called the Ninja, and while it's old as dirt, remains a hell of a good challenge. You'll need to put in some time to see the end of this. That shouldn't be much of a problem because it plays just as well as it challenges you. Of course, with every new device comes the extras you expect, and the Astro City Mini has a number of things for you to look out for. The first of these is a standard 6-button control pad you can pick up the same day the main system launches. It uses the same color scheme as the Mini and looks like it has a D-pad similar to the original Sega Genesis controller. It retails for just under $30 and will be essential for those of you wanting to kick back and play on the big screen. Also announced is an arcade stick that pairs well with the Mini. This is supposed to be made with arcade quality components and it definitely looks the part. I imagine this was done just for those wanting to play Virtua Fighter hardcore, but hopefully it has other compatibilities as well. If you can hook this thing up to a PC, it'll make for an incredible emulation stick. It will retail for roughly $120, the same price as the Astro Mini itself. Also coming out is the Astro City Mini Game Center, which is basically a display package that makes the device look more like an actual arcade machine. It will come with a base that completes the arcade cabinet look, a little blue chair that mimics the stools seen in Japanese arcades, as well as an attract topper that presumably will have stickers for games like Virtua Fighter. This is for the hardcore collector who needs everything or just wants to display their new toy the best possible way. I would imagine most of you have already decided whether you want the Mini or not. There really isn't anything to try and convince you of. For me personally, I love the direction of including only arcade games here. These are not Sega Genesis games, and most of them have rarely seen the light of day in any of Sega's usual compilations. In fact, over 1/3 of the games included here have never been officially released in any way by Sega in their original arcade forms. Seeing stuff like Golden Axe: The Revenge of Death Adder, Arabian Fight, and Dark Edge does my heart all kinds of proud, and having arcade-perfect versions of Shadow Dancer and ESWAT goes a long way too. There does remain a few questions about its design. Why are all the controllers 6-button? There is actually not a single game included that uses all 6, making me wonder if Sega has an Astro Mini 2 in the pipeline it wanted all its peripherals compatible with. Whether that happens or not, this is a great step forward away from the Genesis compilations that dominated Sega's narrative for years, finally giving us not just superior arcade versions, but also games we have never received at home before in their original forms. The inclusion of Virtua Fighter is also a big step, hopefully opening the door for more Model 1, Model 2, and Model 3 games in the near future. Hell, if this thing does well enough, Maybe we'll even see some special editions of it dedicated to genres like racing, opening up an entirely untapped market of Sega driving goodness. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.